if I asked you a really broad question about your time in Columbus and in what you did there, what are you most proud of from that kind of next chapter in your swimming career in college and as an Ohio State Buckeye?
Gosh, I'd say, what I was most proud of was just being a part of that college experience. Because as I mentioned, I didn't really have a strong swimming team in high school. So to be able to go into college and be a part of a group of a bunch of other men that were all motivated towards the same goal of placing as high as we could at the Big Ten championships and qualifying for the NCAAs was immense. So, some of my best friends were on that college swim team. I didn't, growing up, before college, I kind of did my own thing. I didn't hang out with a lot of swimmers. I was kind of like a skateboard rocker kid. I didn't, spend a lot of time with kids on the swim team, even my club team swimmers. I just did my own thing. A lot of my best friends were not on the swim team. So that was my first real experience of being cohesive and having a lot of good friends from other parts of the world with the same mission. And though I wasn't 100% happy with my college career, I still broke some school records and did well at the Big Ten championships. I didn't perform at the highest level that I was hoping that I was going to in college. So not that I have any regrets. I still had the opportunity to have a full scholarship. I also had the opportunity to play water polo at Ohio State for my 5th year there. And meet a lot of great friends and have a lot of great experiences and swim against some of the best swimmers in the country and in the world. And yeah, I was a much stronger long course swimmer. I was not when you compare short course to my long course, not even in the same league. And I was a scrawny kid with terrible turns, and I never really got over 175 pounds even in college. So here I am competing against these big, strong dudes with a lot of power and speed, and I never felt like I could really hang with that kind of speed. But in the summertime, when I went back to long course training, the tables were turned. I was dominating. I was getting top 16 at the U.S. Nationals, all the way through my college years. So, and perhaps, again, going back to the pressure and the anxiety you spend, in college, you spend 9 months of the year prepping for a couple big meets, whereas in the summer, you're a little bit more relaxed. So I always swam better when I was in a relaxed state. And when you're in summer and you don't have classes going on, you can just focus on swimming. So that being combined with just, I think an innate level of endurance and aerobic capacity, that really benefited me long course. I just had a lot more endurance long course where speed wasn't much of a factor as it was that aerobic ability, and that's why I think my 200 freestyle and my 400 freestyle and the 200 meter butterfly started to become the stronger races for me, especially in long course. So not being one of those big, strong, powerful people, I did have to rely on those middle distance or distance events. Not maybe so much the mile. I still had good speed and fast twitch muscle fibers, but not the power and the strength that a lot of those college athletes had. But I still had a great time in college, no regrets. My coach, Bill Wadley, was formerly the Michigan State coach. So my brother swam for Bill Wadley growing up. So he recruited me hard, and knowing that, he could influence me to maybe make that decision. And I love Columbus. It's a great city, and a great university, huge university. So a lot of opportunity was presented to me there. And so, had a great time swimming in college.
Did I see you go all the way through 2004?
Yes. Yep. So I continued.
You got your second trials in?
Yeah. So, I remember it was my 5th year. I had 5 years of full scholarship at Ohio State. So I took my time. I finished my 4 years of swimming eligibility, and then I had that extra year. So I played water polo that year. And then in the spring, after water polo season, I was feeling really good. I had already had my Olympic trials cut, so I figured, why not just after water polo, just start training? It's only going to be, however many 6 months until Olympic trials. Have the opportunity to swim at Olympic trials. I've never had that opportunity, and kind of hang up my suit after that. But I had such a strong Olympic trials. That was my last meet. It was really the best meet of my entire life, and so. after taking a couple years off after that, I felt like, wow, well, since I was kind of a late bloomer and had the best meet in my last meet of my career, perhaps there's more left in me. So, at that point I decided, and I had always wanted to move out to California. So at that point I decided, Ian was already out in California in Santa Cruz. So I decided, why not move out to California? This would be a good way for me to get my foot in the door in California and experience California, especially how strong swimming was in California. But see if I can take it a step further. And though I didn't have a very good 2004 Olympic trials, again, no excuses, but I put way too much pressure on myself. There was a lot of anxiety going into that meet as well. But leading up to that Olympic trials, I had the greatest time of my life, being able to just swim on a professional level and race against Ian Thorpe and race against Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte, and in some cases beat those swimmers. That definitely put a notch on my belt. So though I didn't perform at the 2004 Olympic trials the way I would have liked, I was poised to potentially make the Olympic team because I missed it by 4 spots in 2000 in the 200 free. But leading up to that, I was ready to go, but just didn't have the meet that I wanted to. But really still enjoyed that journey, and I remain in California, and again owe a lot to Ian to this day for allowing me to come out and train under him. Ian was my coach for that 2 or so years leading up to that 2004 Olympic trial. So that was really special to me to be able to work with my brother and to kind of make it a family affair at that Olympic trials.
I'm not sure what my follow-up question is, but we've talked a lot about anxiety, in this hour, and I feel like I kind of want to loop back around there, because if I was to try to sense, if not a regret, I can see that a lot of your frustrations, maybe in meets that you weren't happy with, come back to that word and how all of that connected for you. How did your anxiety express itself? Was it inward in terms of worry? Was it more day of, performance anxiety? How did what you're describing express itself?
It was inward. I definitely didn't want to project my anxiety. I didn't want anyone to feel that, maybe I was weak or wasn't ready. So it was all internal. And that anxiety built as I got closer to that championship meet. And I think that, when I look back on it, it's good to have small little, maybe slight taper and shave meets in the middle of the season, just to kind of keep you motivated instead of putting all your eggs in one basket. So I think that's one of the things in, high school and college swimming that, we could have done a little bit better is, do 1 or 2 small shave and taper meets in there to kind of relieve some of that anxiety. That was certainly a part of it. It was mostly just an internal stress that I put on myself. But when I look back on it, the best performances that I ever had were when I was relaxed and I wasn't anxious. And so I think that's why I bring it up, because when we talk about some of those meets where maybe I didn't swim as best as I wanted to, I can relate that to that stress and that anxiety. And I can also relate my best performances to being relaxed. I mean, and we're not talking an anxiety just like a normal nervous. It's always normal to be nervous. I mean, being nervous is what prepares your mind and your body to race. But you just don't want to tip that balance. And I think sometimes I tip that balance. And so just, having that tension never helps, right? We all know, or we should know, if I can pass anything on, that the more relaxed you are leading into a race, the better. And so it's best not to overthink things. And I overthought things too much and focused too much on that time instead of just letting myself go. So if there's anything I can pass on to future swimmers who might be listening to this, it's you do the work and practice every day, and so just let your body go. Trust your coaches and relax and just step up and do it. Don't overthink it. Dive in and just go and give it 100% and let your mind and your body release all of that effort that it takes. And it's a lot of time and energy that we put into practicing to just let it go. And the times that I did that, I always swam the best. And that's what happened in the 2000 Olympic trials. I was just having fun. I had, again, no expectations. I came back after taking, a year off of swimming and was like, hey, whatever happens, happens. had a great fun summer. It was a short summer, trained really hard, and didn't really expect to do anything, and ended up making the semifinal in the 200-meter freestyle. I got to swim against Adam Messner, who was a little bit younger than me, went on to Stanford, another Michigan swimmer, and he was also in that event. So yeah, you know, the more relaxed you are, you know, if you can put in the work, just step up and go.
That's a tough balance, obviously, you know, like you got to care enough to pour in all the work, but then you have to turn that care off in some way in order to be relaxed enough to find that state that you're referring to. I think that's a really, really difficult balance for every swimmer to figure out, but I think many swimmers can relate to you in terms of, you know, just simply the idea that when you're at your most relaxed. And, you know, I think every swimmer probably has that example of that swim that was strangely good when they weren't as engaged, and like, why did that happen? Why did I go so fast that day when I wasn't, you know, completely, it wasn't that big of a deal? And why did, you know, how all those things connect. So it's great insight. And, you know, yeah, I think it's really good, you know, potentially for a swimmer to be able to listen to this and think, wow, like you're telling me that this guy that won 5 state championships and was a national NISCA champion and went to 2 Olympic trials, that like he got anxious and like that he had race anxiety and some of those things, because I think a lot of kids think that that's either unique to them or something that kids struggle with who aren't as good. You know, that in their mind have something to worry about, but that the guys who have it, these guys have it all figured out. You know, those champions, that's why they win, because they don't get nervous and they don't have that anxiety, you know. And I think it's important for kids to understand that they're not unique in struggling through things that young guys and young girls struggle through between their ears, you know.
Yeah, so that's a good lesson. Correct, that, you know, you can still be the best, but sometimes the best still go through a lot of that pressure and that anxiety. You know, like they say, it's always tough being at the top, right? You get a lot of people chasing you down and wanting to take you down, and you're wanting to improve your times and prove to everyone else that you're the best. Luckily for me, you know, I never felt that pressure from my family. You know, my family was always real supportive. People would think like, oh, you know, that anxiety probably came from, you know, wanting to beat your brothers, but that really wasn't the case at all. You know, they were pretty hands off. You know, my dad in particular, you'd think that even though my dad was, you know, coached me a little bit and was a swimming coach and we grew up under him, that there was a lot of pressure from him, but there wasn't. He was, you know, he let me carve my own path. You know, he didn't go to every single swimming meet. He wasn't breathing down my neck. He just kind of, you know, let me do my thing, and that really worked to my advantage. Otherwise, that probably would have added to that stress and that anxiety. So that really helped to have that family support, no matter how I performed. But of course, I always wanted to, if there was anyone that I wanted to impress, it wasn't the swimming community. It was my brothers, you know, because as I mentioned, I really looked up to them. So if I was, you know, a little anxious or really wanting to perform well, it was to impress my brothers. So, you know, they would accept me and say, wow, you know, and be proud of me, essentially.
Well, they both do. I know you know that, but you know, one of the segments that I haven't posted yet because I kind of wanted to hold it back for your day here in a couple of days when I post some of this stuff. Alec and I got in a really interesting little exchange right at the end, just kind of getting final comments from him on you guys, on his brothers. And we talked about you at the end, and I said, man, like, how many brothers never would have even done swimming? That would have been like, man, I am not trying to follow that, even if it had just been Alec. But the reality is, Ian was probably a shade better than Alec, you know, and took it to another level. So now the second brother comes along and raises the bar even higher to where you could have come along and been a state champion and been the third best. That's a ridiculous bar, you know, just being a state champion doesn't even make you better than your siblings. And, how many kids would have kind of wilted at 11 or 12 in the face of that? And like, I'm not just blowing smoke, Cam, but like, you delivered. Like at the end, you not only did the sport and went into the face of all of those comparisons that you were Ian and Alec's little brother for so long until you eventually, kind of created like, no, that's Cameron Mull. He's his own dog, But it took a long time to do that. And like, I just hope that, and I'm not here to give you be your cheerleader or give you a pump up speech, but like, I hope in retrospect, you can see how many of us kind of on the outside look at that and think, man, I think a lot of guys wouldn't have been tough enough to even take the challenge. But then to really deliver on that and wind up putting up a career that is like shoulder to shoulder with your brothers, where you can have arguments about who goes where in the pecking order, like just to rise to that occasion with all that pressure. Alec acknowledged when I asked him, were you heartbroken that you didn't make the 87 state meet? Like as a freshman, he was like, I didn't have anything to compare it to. So, it wasn't really that big of a deal. But I bet you would have. I bet had you not made the 1992 state meet, you'd have been like, well, geez, they did this, like there's a different bar. And you just had to go through a mental set of kind of obstacles that Alec was free of, and he describes that really well, that he was just a master competitor and he tapped into this testosterone, and that's how he did it. And he just kind of was flying blind as the first one, and you didn't have that luxury. And I just, I know I said a lot there, but I just, I look at your career as one to really be admired, not just for what you did, but the circumstances in which you did it.
Absolutely, yeah. And hopefully I'm not coming off, in that I'm not proud of my career.
Not at all. Not at all.
I still feel like, it's accomplished a lot. I would not be the person I am today if I not had all of that success. And again, and that's why I really thank my brothers for, all I really had to do was emulate them and try to do a little bit more, And the great thing is we kind of swam some different events too. So we kind of had our own niche in the swimming world, where Alec initially, he was more of a freestyler. I was the butterflyer and Ian was the IMer. So we were still kind of unique in our own way. But, as I mentioned, just having these two individuals and just watching them, it just made it easy for me because I knew what it took to train to be as good as them. So when you have role models like that, it makes it easier for a sibling, even though, I felt a little bit of pressure to try to perform as well as them. And then, there's a lot of other factors that play into being a great swimmer. So of course there's genetics as well. We obviously, hard work, genetics. I was lucky. I've got huge hands. I've got extremely long wingspan. I've got huge, giant flat feet. So that allowed me to have an amazing kick. So when you combine, genetics with work ethic and confidence, the sky's the limit, And so I was really fortunate to have those things. And the reason I got a lot of that confidence was from my brothers because, they had confidence through winning over the years. So, if I could just try to emulate what they were doing on a regular basis and in swimming meets, then I was going to be, just all right. So, So again, I hope I don't sound that I'm not proud of my accomplishments. So I don't want people watching this to think like, hey man, come on, because I am extremely proud of those accomplishments.
You should be.
And so, and a lot of my greatest swimming moments were in high school swimming in Michigan. So some of the best times of my life.